Okay, right, there we are. Thank you everyone for joining. Sorry for being a bit delayed, just doing some housekeeping stuff behind the scenes and then ready to go. So thank you all for joining. I just want to say thank you to those who have joined up on my new YouTube membership. We're going to be doing some YouTube live Q&As just for members as well. But I wanted to say thank you to everyone joining that. We had some new members today, so I'll show them. Thank you all very, very much for joining. Hopefully we can make that sort of a good and exciting and beneficial membership program for all of you guys as well. And it may be, I don't know, we'll be able to have sort of set times and days like we try to keep these ones at. But I'll try to start doing, I'll be starting to do just YouTube lives just for members, so it'll be sort of a more close-knit group. And so more people can get their questions answered, and there's not as much competition for getting questions answered and running out of time and things like that. So that might be a little bit helpful for those. So starting out with a couple of the questions. Just These Cakes asks, hi, can carnivore help with Clostridium species, leaky gut, and low progesterone? Well, certainly with hormonal issues, it can definitely help. Any ketogenic diet can potentially help because insulin disrupts a lot of your hormones significantly. Also, you're going to disrupt your normal cholesterol metabolism when you're eating more plants and carbohydrates. That will actually lower your natural cholesterol levels. When you're eating plant oils, plant fats, they have phytosterols that mimic our cholesterol but can't be used for hormones like our cholesterol, and so that signals your body to make less cholesterol, which now has less available to make hormones and cell structures and membranes and brains as well. So that's less good. Also, insulin really disrupts your hormones massively, and there's a big knock-on effect with that for all these different, blocks leptin, which affects even more hormones and things like that. So that's a significant issue. Also, it damages mitochondrial function, being on carb diet with insulin up, because you can't go through autophagy, mitogenesis, so you have less mitochondria that are less active, and your mitochondria are actually what start that hormonal process off by making pregnenolone. That's sort of called the mother of all hormones. And so your mitochondria actually make pregnenolone, and that turns into progesterone, cortisol, and all these other hormones as well. So by improving your mitochondrial function, you're also going to improve your hormonal function like progesterone. You're also going to get a better balance of your hormones because insulin and other sorts of disrupted hormonal factors aren't going to give the wrong signals. Estrogen, for example, that's a major one. Insulin blocks the conversion of testosterone into estrogen in women. And so they get too much testosterone, not enough estrogen. That's PCOS. So the leading cause of PCOS is actually eating carbs and sugar, because that raises your insulin. Clostridium C. diff, it can absolutely help your microbiome. And we're seeing this more and more and more, that people are testing their microbiomes before and after they go carnivore, and it across the board improves. And you look at studies have done in indigenous populations like the Inuit on their traditional diets, they have extremely healthy, beneficial, and diverse microbiomes. So it can certainly help balance your microbiome, improve your microbiome, and keep things like Clostridium in a more appropriate balance. It's not a bad thing to have Clostridium necessarily, but you don't want it to be overabundant, because that can cause serious problems like toxic megacolon, which is not good. And so you get a C. diff infection that can be very dangerous and life-threatening. So if you have a C. diff infection, then obviously you need medical attention. It's not going to be enough just to do diet, but that can certainly help protect you from starting out in the first place. And then obviously when you're healing from a bad infection like that, eating a proper diet is going to dictate what your microbiome is. What you eat is what they eat, and so that will select for different microbes. Hope that helps. Next question is from Pete, who says, hello, Dr. Chaffee, carnivore for 20 months, 95.5% of the way there, 53-year-old male. Why I got meningitis 2 months ago, training 4 days a week, listening to the body when it's tired, max 90 minutes a day of exercise. There's another bit here. Was it too much for my immune system? Meningitis is a very serious infection, obviously, and it is generally not something that you just get spontaneously. Oftentimes, there's some sort of precipitating event, maybe like a head injury or a sinus infection or something that then can lead on to meningitis, such as having a sinus infection and going into on an air flight. I mean, that's recommended against. It's not that you'll definitely get meningitis, but it increases the risk of that sinus infection. Going into meningitis, you have something called a cribriform plate inside your head, where the olfactory nerves, which is cranial nerve 1, is the sense of smell. Those nerves that give you that sense of smell come through that really, really thin plate, and well, it can go the other way too. So these nerves are coming down, bacteria can potentially go up. If you have an injury, you damage that plate, then all of a sudden you can get bacteria into your CSF space or on the dura, which could then lead to meningitis, right? Which is an infection of the dura, which is the sort of the tissue surrounding the brain and encapsulating it and protecting it. So it's usually not just going to happen just because. It's very, very, very rare. There's also bacterial meningitis and viral meningitis. Bacterial meningitis has extremely high morbidity and mortality, meaning that it causes very serious ramifications and disease as a result, and also can kill. It has a high mortality rate, meaning that a lot of people die when they get meningitis. Viral meningitis is miserable, but it's much less dangerous than bacterial meningitis. Bacterial meningitis is aggressive. I mean, the times that you see bacterial meningitis, typically how they present is, they come in the hospital in a coma, having seizures, and and you hear this history that they were getting more and more agitated and angry, and they and you couldn't understand why they're being so upset, and then all of a sudden they just pass out, start having a seizure. That's quite a common presentation for meningitis, and certainly from ones I've seen in the hospital doing emergency work early in my career. And then you stick a needle in their spine, and just pus comes out. I've seen that happen multiple times, and that's how they would present. They come in a coma, having seizures out of nowhere, very quick onset, and then there's just pus coming out on a spinal tap. For the people out there that think that infectious disease just doesn't exist and there are no such things as microbes, there's only terrain, it's just your body. Look, there's the terrain matters, but there are infectious processes. I mean, that's why you have someone with meningitis like that, you give them antibiotics and they get better. I mean, you tell me what happens. You see pus coming out of someone's spinal column. You start understanding what germs can do pretty quickly. Obviously, that's not happening in a vacuum, though. What your health matters. So I don't think you've done anything wrong with a carnivore diet. I can't say if you're training more than your body wanted you to or not, but people overtrain all the time, they don't get meningitis. So I would imagine that there's something else that happened. There's some other sort of precipitating event. I don't think it's necessarily because you're working out too hard, unless you hurt yourself, but that's not too hard, that's just hurting yourself. Certainly not to do with a carnivore diet, but maybe there was something. Maybe you had a hand injury, maybe you had a sinus infection and maybe didn't even realize it and then went on an airplane, things like that. So I would look into those sorts of things. But I don't think that it's something that you would have done there. If you were overtraining, your body would have told you that. Your body would have told you wouldn't have been feeling as well. You wouldn't be recovering as well. When you're on carnivore, you recover so much more quickly than you would on any other diet. You're just giving your body what it actually needs to recover, and you're eliminating things that are going to slow down your recovery. So my recoveries are near instantaneous. I don't get sore after working out unless it's like spices or seasonings or something like that gets mixed into my meals. And actually I had a big workout on the weekend, did a lot of hill and stair sprints because that seems to be better for my knee. And then I went to the gym and did like a heavy leg workout. Like on top of that, it was the first time in a long time that I got to the point where my legs were actually shaking. It's just like, oh goodness, that usually doesn't happen. But also I was paring down the rest time. Like I don't give myself a lot of rest. So I'm really trying to wear myself out. Because again, your recovery is so quick. But I felt fine the next day, but then I had these meat sticks from the South African store, these Drovor's things, which were amazing. But I try to ask them I get the ones without spices. Sometimes they specially make them for me. This time I didn't sort of plan ahead, so I just got the normal ones. And just those spices, first of all, they don't taste as good to me anymore. I just like the taste of the meat. I don't want the spices covering up that taste of meat. But also, then the soreness started to increase. Now I'm nowhere near what I would be otherwise, but my calves are pretty tight, and so like I'm walking around, it's just like, oh, that's annoying, and it is annoying because I haven't been sore in years, and so your body recovers so much faster. So I would be surprised if you were overtraining to the point that your body was actually starting to shut down. But see what your body feels. If you felt like you were probably overdoing it, then pull it back a bit. But you can train very intensely and recover just fine. So I think it would be, and again, people overtrain all the time. They don't get meningitis because of it. So do try to think about other sorts of things. Maybe work with your doctor to figure out what other sort of risk factors may have been involved with that. But good luck with it, and good luck with your recovery. And hope you're feeling a lot better now. It's a scary thing to get. It's meningitis. Okay. Okay. So next question is from Gorlon Life. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Exploring carnivore for 1 year. Bad reactions to butter, ghee, tallow, pork fat. Carb, grass-fed, store-bought steaks, regenerative grass-fed meat, and beef fat trimmings work, and it's cheap, but triglycerides are at 308, and I'm panicking. So your triglycerides can change for a number of different reasons. So finding the meat that works best for you. Some people really do need to stick to the whole grass-fed and finished sorts of meats. It's certainly more nutritious. When you look at the nutritional profile of these meats, they typically have more micronutrients. One ranch I saw that they published their nutrient profile for their cattle had 4 to 5 times the amount of vitamins and minerals that would normally be found in USDA sort of average for beef in the US. So that's good. Does that mean that you're going to get significantly better health as a result of that? Well, maybe not. If you're getting enough already on store-bought meat, then you're fine. Some people may need a little bit more. This is where organs come in. You can fill in those gaps pretty easily if you don't have access to grass-fed, finished, pasture-raised sort of stuff. Also, the fat profile is going to be different. You're going to get a better omega-3 profile from the grass-fed fats, grass-finished fats, really. So it needs to have that naturally yellow hue to it. So you found those. That's great. It's cheap for you. Awesome. That's the best way to do it then. Triglycerides are not coming from the meat that you're eating. Triglycerides come from carbohydrates, sugar, alcohol, stress. So cortisol will increase your triglycerides as well, and your blood sugar and your insulin and all sorts of other things. All these hormones are really important, but they're really important in a very specific balance. That's the whole point. They are very important. And so if you get them out of balance, either high or low, you have problems. So when you are stressed, when you are getting poor sleep, like if you average 5 hours of sleep per night or less for just 7 nights in a row, you can actually have such a cortisol increase that will actually give you prediabetes and insulin resistance and hyperglycemia. So that's not what you want. And that cortisol, that stress hormone, and poor sleep can actually increase your triglycerides. Also, it's really important to know, what were your triglycerides before you started this, right? Because if your triglycerides were 500, 600, and now they're 308, that's actually really positive because things are going in the right direction. Also, what's really important, what's your HDL? Is your HDL over 40, over 50, over 60? Well, then you're in pretty good shape. And even though your triglycerides are a bit elevated, you're being covered by your HDL, which is very good. So triglycerides, you sort of look at that as a weather vane. What are you eating first? Well, it sounds like you're eating pretty well. Are you having anything else on top of that? Even artificial sweeteners and things like that. We don't know exactly what those do to cholesterol, triglycerides, but they can increase insulin, and so they do have hormonal effects and physiological effects on your body. So if you're eating anything besides that regeneratively raised grass-fed and finished, beef fat and that sort of thing, you just cut it out. Anything besides meat, just cut it out. Even if it's only every now and then. And then what you want to do is optimize your stress levels, prioritize sleep, get out in the sun, do those sorts of healthy things, the other healthy things. Exercise, high intensity exercise can help as well. It certainly can help increase HDL and can potentially decrease triglycerides as well. And then just check again in a couple of months and just see where you're at. Don't be too worried about it, because the thing is that, first of all, cholesterol tests and most blood tests are really temperamental. If you take your cholesterol levels 10 times in the same day, you're going to get 10 different results. It is just all over the place. And if you're exercising or sedentary, it makes a difference. If you're stressed out or relaxed, it makes a difference. If you fasted 8 hours before your test versus 12 hours before your test, it makes a difference. So fast at least 12 hours and get it first thing in the morning, get it the same time during the day, get the same fasting status, same amount of time fasting. Don't eat anything, drink anything, in the morning or whatever. And to be very calm and sedentary. Don't work out, exercise, or have sex the day before or the morning of. All those things affect your cholesterol, all of them, and your hormones. So, and just be very calm and relaxed. You get angry and upset, like someone cuts you off in traffic and get pissed off. That will change your results too. It's crazy. And we put so much stake into these blood tests, especially things like cholesterol, and they're so temperamental. They're so temperamental. I have patients who, because of their work, they have to do periodic cholesterol tests, and they're extremely healthy, and all their levels are perfect and getting better, and their health is improved dramatically. And so, but then they get in trouble because their cholesterol and LDL is higher than one, although their HDL is perfect, their triglycerides are perfect. And so what they do is they just drink milk for a couple of weeks and add in some avocados or coconut oil, because that has the plant sterols that tell your body you're eating cholesterol, and it just lowers your cholesterol production, right? And then cholesterol just comes right down. And then they pass their test and they go back to doing what they were doing before, because they actually don't feel as good on the milk with the avocados and coconut oil. And so, unfortunately, some people have to game the system in order to, manipulate these tests in order to, not be negatively affected at work. But it's, it's not, the point is that it's very easy to change and manipulate. Some doctors were saying, no, it takes months and months and months to change your cholesterol. It takes minutes. If you just go to the gym and then check your cholesterol, if you check your cholesterol fasting, sedentary in the morning, then go to the gym, do a heavy workout, test your cholesterol again, it'll be different. And so, you have to take this in the same way every single time and consistently, or else you can't really trust your results. If you weren't fasted long enough, your triglycerides will always be up, because that the fat from what you ate going to chylomicrons, that shows up differently on your cholesterol as well. So I would just fast for at least 12 hours and get it done first thing in the morning, relax the day before, and test it again. And again, just be mindful that stress and poor sleep can absolutely negatively affect your triglyceride levels legitimately. Sorry, cat's knocking things over. It's a cat. They always do that. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Good luck with that. It's from Zachary, just a nice shout out. It says, love you, Dr. Chaffee. Healed sciatica nerve damage. That's fantastic. I'm really glad to hear that, Zachary. And yeah, I've seen so many amazing neurological recoveries, especially neurological recoveries. And I think the reason for that is, A, you're in ketosis, and ketones are neuroprotective, help reduce inflammation, and also help rebuild the structures of your brain and your nervous system. Like, ketones are very helpful for that. They cross the blood-brain barrier, reconstitute into fatty acids that get used as the physical structures in your brain and nerves. Also, you're getting actual nutrients that your brain and your nervous system require, like B12. If you don't get enough B12, and people say, oh, well, I'm in the range. If you're in the reference range for B12, typically you're pretty low. There have been studies looking at optimal reference ranges, and those are very different than the lab ranges that only look at the average for the population. You have to understand that most people on planet Earth are vegetarians, besides us and the Maasai and Inuit and things like that, or the Nanette, Dinka, these sorts of people. 80% of the calories consumed in America are plant-based, right? Most of those are processed plants, carbs and sugar and crap like that. But they're plants. Plants don't have B12. And so you're getting an average of the population. You're taking the average of a vegetarian population. B12 is always going to be low. You're not going to be able to regrow and rebuild your nervous system if you have B12 like that of a vegetarian. It's not going to happen. If you get your B12 below 500 picomoles per liter, which is around the world, that's the typical unit, you can actually get demyelination and nerve damage. And so your nerves are actually getting damaged. How are you supposed to rebuild your nerves if you don't have enough B12 to even maintain your nerves and they're actually getting damaged? That's about 650, 700 picograms per milliliter in US numbers, right? So that's huge. I mean, some of those reference ranges go down to 150 and up to 600, 700. And most of that reference range is going to be in such a critical deficiency that you're actually getting brain damage, right? So how are you supposed to rebuild your nerves if you have such a deficiencies that you're actually getting nerve damage and brain damage? Think about those. You Google this. You just Google normal CT brain of a child or MRI brain of a child. It's full of brain. You barely see any gaps anywhere. Then Google CT brain or scan of child with B12 deficiency. It's so atrophied it looks like a 70, 80-year-old alcoholic with Alzheimer's. It is profoundly atrophied and shrunken and just not developed because of that B12 deficiency. And then they'll often show a before and after. So I have this really shriveled walnut-looking brain, and then after of a 6-month-old baby, I saw one. And then given B12, that's actually recovered after several months, actually filled out, probably looks like a 30-year-old, 40-year-old brain, but not like a 6-month-old brain should look. It should have no spaces anywhere. It should just be completely filled to the brim. So that was the particular one I'm thinking of was a 6-month-old child of a vegetarian couple and vegetarian parents, and they had profound B12 deficiency to the point that their brain could not develop properly. I mean, that's child abuse. I mean, that's pure and simple child abuse. And so they replaced the B12, and that helped significantly. But what about all the other animal-based nutrients that you're not getting that are required and essential for neurological development and recovery as adults and maintenance as we get older, like vitamin D3, choline, creatine, carnitine, DHA, EPA. There's 20% of your brain is made out of DHA. That only comes from animal products. The omega-3s from plants do not convert properly. It's like 1% at best. And actually, a lot of studies show that the more plant-based omega-3s, omega-6s that you get actually lowers your DHA and EPA. Okay, so that's out, right? You cannot get a sufficient amount of DHA and EPA from plants. Even with that horrible conversion. And you get problems as well. The linoleic acid is very pro-inflammatory. Your brain tries to use it as energy, and it causes a lot of oxidative stress and damage. So that's awful. And also, yes, saturated fat and cholesterol, these are essential nutrients that your brain requires for development and actually maintenance. So there's a little brain that recovered significantly on B12, but it didn't get back to what it should look like at a 6-month-old. Well, these are children of vegetarians, and they say, oh, B12, that's the only thing you need to supplement. The hell it is. There are so many things that are required for your brain, and an animal-based carnivore diet meets those demands. I mean, there was a study that came out recently that showed that women that supplemented with over 900 milligrams of choline, that their children, while they were pregnant, that their children had significantly higher IQs than that mothers that supplemented with less choline, like 400 something milligrams. So they're still giving them choline, which is required for brain development, but even giving them more than that's even better. Choline doesn't exist in plants that have like phosphatidylcholine, and so it has choline in the word. It's not the same thing. That's lecithin, like soy lecithin, all that sort of garbage. It's not the same thing. It can provide some benefits like cell membrane signaling, things like that. It's not choline. It does not have the neurological benefits that are required from actual choline. It's different. Just because it has the word choline in the name does not mean it's the same thing. So if people are supplementing with this, do not get the phosphatidylcholine. That's plant lecithin. That's not choline. You need choline. That comes from meat, animal fat. Egg yolks are very rich in that. Usually an average egg yolk, USDA egg yolk, has like 130 milligrams of choline. Okay, so you have 8 of those a day, and you're in that 900 plus range on choline. your baby's brain is developing, or at least getting the choline that it needs to develop. More might be even better. Your brain needs choline too, surprise, surprise. So it's very important. So when you do a carnivore diet, like people that do my MS protocol for rebuilding and regrowing nervous tissue with someone who has multiple sclerosis, we are seeing people actually shrink their lesions down and not only improve symptomatically from multiple sclerosis. I mean, some of these people are severely neurologically impacted or even bedridden, and are now making significant recovery. Some are actually leading normal lives from being bedridden. We're actually publishing a case series on these. And the MRIs, we're actually seeing the recovery on MRI. We're actually seeing these lesions shrink on MRI, which is incredible. But it's not surprising, because most people, when they have MS, they're even told to do a plant-based diet, stay away from meat. Why? Based on what evidence? You're not going to get any of those nutrients that you require to recover that neurological damage. It's not going to happen. So I see so many people improving on carnivore diets, especially ketogenic carnivore diets, where they really do cut out all the sugar and even the milk and the honey, and definitely they just do so much better. Ketones are really helpful for the brain and neuroprotective. They increase BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is like fertilizer for your brain. It causes your brain to grow new neurons and new synapses and actually grow, heal, and repair. So that, along with all those essential animal nutrients that you cannot get from any other source, and supplements are a pretty poor version of these things. And again, you might get the phosphatidylcholine instead of actual choline and not even realize there's a difference. So when you're actually eating properly, you're giving your body and your brain these things, you can actually see neurological recovery. And so it's fantastic to see more of that happening. I'm really glad to see that you healed your sciatic nerve damage, and I'm always really excited when I see people with these amazing recoveries. And neurologically, it was sort of a mystery for me for a while, but I just saw so many profound neurological recoveries. I mean, Dave Mack, who I've had on my channel, and he's had me on his channel, he had a stroke 30 years ago, and he did keto, he did Atkins, things like that. It wasn't enough. It wasn't until he went carnivore that he actually started recovering, and he had profound right-sided weakness in his arm and leg, and there's still some weakness there, but it's like 80% better, and it happened within months. And all of a sudden, he's walking without a significant limp and a hitch, and finding it difficult to go up and down stairs, and being so off balance that he falls a lot, and those sorts of things. That was his life for 30 years. Now he has no problems really. Still has like a bit. Like if you look for it, there might be a bit of a weakness there and a bit of a limp. But I mean, it's night and day difference. I mean, he shows videos of him walking before and after. It's 30 years later. So we think in neurosurgery and just medicine in general that you have nerve damage, it's going to be basically, you're going to have a certain amount of healing. It takes months and months, if not a year or more, to heal nerve tissue, slow growing. That's true. But it's a lot slower if you don't have the proper nutrients and building blocks, isn't it? And so after a year, 2 years tops, whatever healing you get, that's it. That's all you're going to get. And yet 30 years later, Dave Mack recovered from his stroke, or improved from his stroke. Imagine if he did it right at the time, maybe we would have gotten more recovery. We don't know. But you're not going to get much recovery at all if you're not getting proper nutrition. And we're told that proper nutrition is actually the opposite of what is actually going to give you any sort of neurological recovery. So I'm thinking that the reason we say now year, 2 years tops, that's all the recovery you're going to get, is based on looking at a population that is undernourished and malnourished, and certainly does not have the correct building blocks, and probably almost certainly doesn't have enough vitamin B12. You want to be between 1,100 and 1,600 picograms per milliliter for B12. That's what studies show is the optimal range. Or in picomoles per liter, you want to be between 800 and 1,200. So most of the time, that's well above the lab reference range, which is just an average of a vegetarian population. Remember that the definition of a hypercarnivore is an animal that eats more than 70% of its total calories from meat. That's a hyper carnivore. And the 80% of the calories consumed in America and Australia and Europe and other Western countries, even worse in India, it's almost 100%. That over 80% of the calories are plant-based. So, everyone says, oh, we need to go plant-based, got to go plant-based. We're already plant-based. The American people are actually hyper-vegetarians. If over 70% calories from meat and animal products is a hyper-carnivore, well, then the average person, most people in America, Australia, Europe, and elsewhere are actually hyper-vegetarians, right? So the plant-based model is defunct. We're already looking at it. We're looking at the consequences of that. It's terrible. And so, especially from neurological recovery, you do not get these nutrients. They don't exist in plants, and the plants can have anti-nutrients, which will block out their absorption as well. So even if you're technically eating enough meat with enough B12, etc., you may not be absorbing it. And so, so I am not surprised anymore by the neurological recoveries. I think that's the exact reason why, and that's why I made that MS protocol, which is applicable to anybody who wants to do a carnivore diet as good as you can do it. And especially for neurological recovery, it's focusing on getting those nutrients that you really need for proper neurological development and recovery. And so you follow that model too for your kids if you want them to have optimal neurological development as well. So good to see that, Zachary. Thank you for sharing. Tina Cox, looks like there's a super chat, but maybe not something attached. But well, thank you for the super chat anyway. Maybe if there's a question, we can try to find it. And there's little Ellie Melly. Good to see you, Ellie, who's saying hello from Japan. She's off in Japan now with her stepmom and daughter and having a good time. So I'm jealous. They're going to like a sumo wrestler lunch where we watch sumo wrestlers do battle while you eat hot pot. So sounds like a lot of fun, and having some of the beef and wagyu and all that sort of stuff, which is great too. So hi, Ellie Melly. Hope you're having fun. Okay. Here's a question from Robin Johnson, who says, I'm an 82-year-old female, stopped losing weight after 2 strokes 12 months ago. Now hypothyroidism and just found high CRP, blood pressure is great. Too much damage done in pre-carnivore life, ? Love your work, much appreciated, Granny Johnson. No, not at all. I mean, the thing is that whatever, whatever you've done up until this point, you are where you are. That's your starting point. Everybody has a different starting point, but that doesn't mean that you can't improve. Is it the case that you'll recover completely as if you were when you were 40 and you started this, or if you just did this your whole life? There's no way to tell that. There is such a thing as damage done, and you can cause so much damage to your body that your body can recover a lot of it, but maybe not all of it. And maybe if you've damaged their thyroid to such a degree with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, autoimmune condition, or with all these goitrogens. Plants have a whole category of plant toxins called goitrogens that cause goiters. And actually, I'm going to write down. I'm doing a talk later, and I actually just remembered one thing about. Sorry, everyone. Where are you? Okay, perfect. All right. If I don't write that down now, it's never going to happen. So, so the thing is that there's a lot of different causes of hypothyroidism. Being in ketosis is not one of them. There are studies showing that people in ketosis up to 2 years, they have no drop in their thyroid production. This is sort of a prevailing myth that says, well, if you have low thyroid, you don't want to do ketogenic because it'll drop your thyroid. No, it damn well won't. It has been shown scientifically that you don't need as much thyroid hormone when you are in ketosis, because the T3 actually has to do with energy production in your mitochondria, and you need more of it when you're burning carbs. And so you actually don't need as much when you're running on ketones. So that may sort of offset things. If someone had sort of a bit of hypothyroidism, that can actually improve their condition because they don't necessarily need as much. But what happens when, some people say, oh, well, look, my thyroid sort of hormone went down a bit when I went into ketosis or was on that for a long time. What do most people do when they're going on a ketogenic diet? They add a whole bunch of plants, right? Because they say that that's where you get all your nutrients from, right? No, it's not. You get all your nutrients from the meat. The plants actually just mess things up and makes so it blocks out the absorption of these things. And these goitrogens, quite often, what they do is they'll block iodine from being able to go into your cells. You need iodine in all your cells. It's not just your thyroid. But if iodine doesn't go in your thyroid, you can't make thyroid hormone. That's part of the chemical structure of thyroid hormone. So with these goitrogens, you're going to get basically an iodine deficiency. So that's another nutrient, anti-nutrient basically, is these goitrogens that stop your body from being able to utilize iodine. Kale's full of them, broccoli's full of them, cruciferous vegetables are full of them, but there are many, many more. So what happens? People go ketogenic, they eat a lot of meat and fat, but what they also do is they eat a ton of leafy green vegetables because those are just so yummy good for you. No, they're not. They're terrible for you. And that could absolutely stuff up your thyroid because you're getting all those goitrogens. And so that's something. But when I see people, I have hundreds of people who come to me with thyroid issues, Hashimoto's or otherwise, I invariably see them improve or just stay the same. I have never once seen them get worse, not a single time ever. The other thing too is you have all these anti-nutrients which will block out the absorption of vitamins and minerals like zinc and selenium. If you don't have enough zinc and selenium, you cannot convert T4 into T3. And corn, for instance, can block up to 100% of the zinc in your diet. You can't absorb it, cannot absorb it. Black beans have been shown to block out up to 75% of the zinc absorption. If you don't have enough zinc, you cannot properly convert T4 into T3, which is the active form. So, and then Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is the leading cause of hypothyroidism. Now, it used to be iodine deficiency and goitrogens, but now because of the increase in prevalence of autoimmune diseases, that's the #1 cause now. Well, carnivore diets address that as well. It stops the damage from autoimmune issues and actually starts dropping down those antibodies. And I've seen a lot of people with autoimmunity, with Hashimoto's thyroiditis that actually improved, stopped the damage, and actually started reversing some of that damage. But it can take a year, 2 years for your thyroid to be able to heal enough that you can come down or come off your thyroid medication. So you need to titrate that carefully with your doctor, and it may be, again, damage done. You may not be able to recover significantly from all that damage that's happened over the years. So you just have to see. You might have to use thyroid medication long term, but you'll improve things otherwise. You'll also improve the conversion of T4 into T3. Most people are on thyroxine, which is T4. That is the storage form that has to be converted into T3. Don't have enough zinc, don't have enough selenium, you're not going to do that efficiently. And doctors are just going to test your TSH and T4 at best. You have no idea what your T3 is. You may actually be hypothyroid. Because that's the active form, that's the one that matters more than T4. So no, it's definitely not too late. It can help a lot of these issues. Certainly can reduce inflammation. It's a very anti-inflammatory diet. Any ketogenic diet is, because ketones help suppress inflammation by blocking something called the NLRP3 inflammasome, and that stops inflammation from starting. That inflammasome ends up triggering a cytokine cascade with various interleukins, etc., that will increase inflammation, inflammatory response inappropriately sometimes. And so, having ketones be elevated, that can actually act as an internal anti-inflammatory, and that can help with pain as well as inflammation. Also, you're not bringing in all the inflammatory things like plants and grains and all those sorts of things have in abundance. So, and just running on ketones instead of carbohydrates, that improves inflammation and reduces oxidative stress, because when your mitochondria are running on carbohydrates, they actually kick off free radicals and cause oxidative stress, which you don't want, obviously. So it's an antioxidant and anti-inflammatory diet. Red meat does not cause inflammation. That's just a nonsense that people throw out there without any evidence either being asked for or provided. And yet when I put people on only red meat diets, I see their CRP and their inflammatory factors go down and improve, and their pain reduces, and their inflamed joints improve, and autoimmunity improves, and all these other sorts of things. So that it can definitely help you. There are plenty of people in their 80s and beyond that have gone carnivore with significant improvements. It's never a bad time to stop eating poison, and that's really what these other foods are. And just eating an actual proper human diet, an actual biologically appropriate species-specific diet for our biology, and that's what meat is, and that's what avoiding plants is as well. So good luck with that. Hopefully you see a lot of improvement. I'm sure you will. Good luck with that. In fact, I'll just leave it on this. There was a friend of mine. She's a GP here in Perth. She told me about a gentleman who was a patient of hers. He was 86 years old, and he basically couldn't take care of himself at home anymore. Family couldn't help him out, and he checked himself into a nursing home. And in his words, basically to just wait for death. So basically it. He couldn't even take care of himself, and he was just waiting there basically to die. And he came across a carnivore diet. I think he came across my channel, saw some videos, and he just said, all right, I'm going to try it, just last ditch effort to get his life back. And so he did that. And within 3 months, he was back living at home, fully independent, working out at the gym 3 days a week, swimming twice a week, and off all medications at 86 years old. So no, it's definitely not too late. You may not be able to, recover absolutely everything, but you can definitely improve from where you are now and have a massive, massive, massive benefit by doing this as well. And remember, that Maggie White, the rancher that I interviewed, she's 84, right? So, and she's still working on her farm on her own. It's not like has a whole bunch of ranch hands doing the job for her. She is out there with the cows every single day, building fences, mending lines, like doing everything herself, her and her husband, right? And she's just fit as all can be, and happy and healthy and having a great life. So yes, you still have a lot of life left in you, and I think this is exactly the time to start that. So there's a question from R, and super chat from R. Thank you so much for the super chat. Question is, are there any studies you could recommend that address CPTSD and ABD from stress on the nervous system and brain, please? CPTSD, so maybe a chronic PTSD, and ABD. I'm not sure what ABD stands for. Maybe you pop it up in the chat, we can sort of see, but I don't know about ABD because I'm not actually sure what that means. Well, there are studies on PTSD, certainly, and there's that. Well, there's some studies that's not carnivore related, but there is a treatment. I think it's called like dual sympathetic blocks or something like that. Anyway, they do this injection on your sympathetic chain, and that seems to dampen down that PTSD sort of response and actually just calm things down a bit. And potentially you have to do this sort of every couple of years. You can do it sort of bilaterally on both sympathetic chains, and that seems to calm things down. That's just something I just randomly came across. My sister has a master's in psychology, and specifically looking at, she did her master's thesis on PTSD, and this is just something just came up in conversation that she told me about. So that's the only reason I know about it. But she seemed pretty excited about the research on that. So that's something maybe to look into. I mean, there are certainly anecdotal cases where people had PTSD or chronic PTSD, certainly, and like in military and things like that. I've spoken to a lot of people in the military and people that work with people in the military who are basically dealing with PTSD, and they find that it's extremely helpful being on ketogenic carnivore sorts of diets, which would make sense. Again, you're just sort of normalizing your brain chemistry and the energy systems to the brain. You're reducing inflammation significantly, and you're stimulating BDNF. You're giving your brain all the vitamins and minerals and nutrients, proteins and fats that it needs to sort of rebuild and regrow and potentially work properly. And also the mitochondria working more appropriately can help with any sorts of major psychological stressors like that as well. So I don't know if that's been studied. Like would likely ketogenic diets would look at that. I'm not sure, but what you can do is you can go on Google Scholar sort of has a wider net than PubMed, gets the same things and then more. And you can look on just, I would put in, you know, PTSD or CPTSD and ketogenic diets, and just put those in and see if that's been done. Probably has. There are literally thousands of human studies that have been done on ketogenic diets for various issues, and they largely seem to help. So maybe take a look for that. And I've certainly seen people improve dramatically by doing ketogenic carnivore approach for PTSD and other neurological and psychological issues. So good luck with that. Hopefully that does help. Okay, so a question from Jack Morgado, who says, can carnivore diet help my 4-month-old baby with Down syndrome with her development? Oh, sorry, complex PTSD, not chronic PTSD. Okay, so sorry about that. Yeah, so from Jack, so can this help with Down syndrome development? Well, it's not going to change the Down syndrome, right? So that's a chromosomal issue. That's trisomy 21. So that's you have 3 copies of the 21st chromosome, right? So 2 from one parent, 1 from another parent. Now you get 3 of them, where you're normally supposed to have 2. So now that's upregulated all the different genes and proteins that those chromosomes code for, and that's going to change development, and we see that as Down syndrome. Will it help her development? 100%, because again, you're getting all of these cofactors, vitamins, minerals, and just proteins, fats, and cholesterol that are required for her brain development. So, you know, she unfortunately has, you know, is a bit at a disadvantage due to the trisomy 21. But optimizing her nutrition, especially from a neurological point of view, can at least optimize her development. And you know, there are definitely wide ranges of intellectual delay in people with Down syndrome, from some people that are just pretty normal functioning to people that are nonverbal, 100% dependent on others to take care of them. So it's a wide range, and so certainly optimizing her nutrition is going to give her the ability to develop to the best of her genetic capabilities, and that's true for all of us. True for all of us, that just providing yourself optimal nutrition and getting rid of things that are going to cause harm, that what that does is it allows your body to work as well as it can work according to your genetics and your environment. So yes, I think it is really beneficial. I would again look at my MS protocol, the multiple sclerosis protocol. I don't know if Melissa has a link for that she can put in the chat for people to take a look at, but it is on my website at dranthonychaffee.com, and so that you should be able to find that on there too. It's also on Twitter somewhere, but it's not like pinned or anything like that. But you know, optimizing the healthy, the really best fats, like the grass-fed and finished animal fats, grass-fed butter, grass-fed tallow, grass-fed ghee, should be yellow. If it's not yellow, it's probably not grass-fed or finished. And getting all those nutrients, you know, the B12 especially, I would check those things. I would make sure that she's optimized on B12, vitamin D, and so on, for the things you can check, you know, but things like choline, creatine, carnitine. Carnitine you're going to get from meat, creatine, all the rest you're going to get from meat. Sometimes, you know, a little bit extra is even more beneficial. So things like egg yolks, really good for the choline side of things. Creatine, best source is red meat. And obviously there's supplements and things like that, but I'm not suggesting you give a 4-year-old a creatine supplement unless you think that she's deficient in some way. But just the red meat, egg yolks, pasture-raised sort of egg yolks, you're going to get all these extremely beneficial nutrients and fats that the brain is made out of. So you'll help optimize her development. And so compared to eating a standard diet, 100%, I absolutely think that it will definitely help with her development as compared to that. It's not going to change the Down syndrome. It's not going to change that from existing and being a thing, but it will optimize her developing from here with Down syndrome and give her the best life and development that she's capable of getting, with her development. So yeah, I would definitely optimize those sorts of things. And, for any child, you would want that. And so yes, I do think that would help significantly. Okay. So next we have a super chat from Easy Mode RL. Thank you very much for the super chat. They say that ulcerative colitis for 2 years on carnivore and cheated, got a flare up of 1 month of colitis. Doctor wants Humira now, mesalamine and budesonide, no effect. Yeah, I mean, I would just go back to doing carnivore, right? I'll just go back to doing carnivore. 1 second now. Oh, got it. So this is sort of more for about Humira. So look, I would definitely go back to carnivore. I mean, the thing is that there are randomized controlled trials in humans looking at Crohn's, which is very, very similar to ulcerative colitis. It's autoimmune anyway, and actually showing that just putting people on an elemental diet, meaning you just give them the base nutrients that they need and nothing else. In powder form, it's ketogenic to give it to kids with epilepsy. That's what it was developed for. That was a better treatment for an acute flare-up of Crohn's than prednisone steroids, right? Which is the gold standard for getting someone out, but it just shuts down your immune system. So that's not great. Certainly not a long-term option. And so what does that mean? That means that not eating certain things is a better treatment than steroids, right? So that means that something that you're eating is causing this, right? Okay, so let's get rid of that first and foremost, right? Just go back to just red meat and water. There's another study that showed that removing carbs and fiber kept people in remission without medication with Crohn's disease up to 51 months, so over 4 years, and contrasted that with the control group. They didn't come off carbs or fiber, and they stayed in remission on average 0 months. So not very helpful there. So again, that shows you the dietary links with at least Crohn's disease and likely all autoimmune diseases. So that's number one. Be very, very strict. Don't mess around. I wouldn't even eat chicken or bacon or eggs, or certainly not dairy. Beef, lamb, water, nothing else. High fat. Get your ketones up. Get that inflammation down. And if that's not enough, and you need something like Humira or whatever to help you out, I would personally look at that as a short-term option, something to help you get through this acute flare-up, calm things down, and then maintain it with the diet side of things if you have to. I have not really seen people who stick to beef, lamb, and water who aren't able to calm it down significantly. The majority of people are able to put their UC and Crohn's disease into complete remission. I have seen a few examples of people that even on a lion diet, it's not enough. They have to go to full grass-fed and finished yellow fat beef and lamb and water and nothing else. They're so sensitive that anything will trigger them. And so one gentleman said that his ulcerative colitis improved 80%, massively improvement, just changed his life. But he's still having these issues, and that's what I recommended for him. And I have seen a number of people in that group. I mean, a number of people as in a few select individuals. Most people do extremely well just on beef, lamb, and water of any dietary description. Feeding them feedlot, whatever. Because ruminant animals can ferment and break down those toxins, break down the glyphosate and all that sort of stuff. But some people are going to but it may not get absolutely everything. And so, or maybe the linoleic acid is triggering things off, which you'll have higher levels of linoleic acid on grain finished than lower omega-3s, which actually could make a difference in some people. So after 3 months in a feedlot, they basically have no omega-3s left, for instance. So, especially when you're like a baby or a developing brain or neurological recovery, you really, really need to get some of those. But grass-fed butter, ghee, things like that can potentially work as well. So you may be one of those people that that just need the grass-fed, finished, pasture-raised sort of approach, grass-fed butter, or maybe not even butter, like grass-fed ghee, or even just grass-fed tallow. Those sorts of things. The fact of the matter is that you were on carnivore for 2 years with ulcerative colitis, and then you cheated, and then you got a flare-up, which really suggests that you're actually doing just fine with what you were doing before, and it's really just the other stuff that triggered this off. And again, it's the food causing that, right? So if you need Humira as a short-term solution to help sort of settle things down and then maintain, you could think about that. If I am, consulting with a patient, that would be the kind of conversation that I would have with them. Any medication that we discuss is going to be a short-term intervention. It's like a Band-Aid just to bridge that gap while they're recovering and healing, and really letting the nutrition side of things, the diet and lifestyle, really carry the weight of things. And that's what I see. And so, some people need to bridge that gap because they're just having a really hard time. But it's the diet that's going to affect these things long term, and that's what you want to do. So that's what I would suggest. Humira is not something that is nice to be on very long, because it trashes your immune system, and now you don't have an immune system to speak of. Now you're going to get infections. You're in high risk of infectious disease and high risk of cancers, which is nobody wants, right? So anyway, it increases your risk of developing cancer down the road as well. So not ideal anyway. So good luck with that. You've already shown that that the diet works, so it's already a proof of concept. Just need to go back to that and be very, very strict, and you'll be fine long term. And think about that again. If you're using pharmaceutical interventions, you think about these things as a short-term intervention to bridge a gap, and then get to where you need to go with the other sort of mechanisms addressing the root cause of the issue. Okay, I'm going to just back in 1 second. Give me a second here. Okay, sorry about that. Just had to open the door for the cat. Okay, second here. And okay, so I have another question here from Rick Newski, and like I said, I try to sort of answer as many questions as I can. Obviously, I have to prioritize the super chats. But I do try to sort of pepper in different questions from different platforms as well. And yeah, so I do try to get to other questions as well, but obviously can't always get to all the questions, which is why I have to prioritize the super chats. So apologies if people don't get their questions answered. Question from Rick Newski, who says, "Hello, doctor. Can carnivore result in constipation? And if so, what can you do to avoid that?" Yeah, so I have videos on this on called like fiber constipation and diet is one of them, and also my Carnivore for Beginners video addresses this as well. It depends on your definition of constipation. Most people, when they think about constipation, they think that they're going in frequently, and that means they're going to have these really hard, massive, dry stools. And usually when you're eating sort of a mixed diet with a bunch of fiber and plants, and that's typically what you see. If you're not going, very frequently, it's going to be tough when it does happen. That's not the case on a carnivore diet, because you're absorbing 98% or more of the meat that you're eating. If you remove the gristle and just eat the soft fat with the soft meat, you'll absorb basically 100% of the meat that you're eating. That was a Salisbury steak, was taking out all the gristle and just having the soft muscle body and without all the connective tissue around it, and the soft fat, or adding butter to that as well. So that and that was specifically for people with Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, and horrible gut issues that really needed to just completely rest their bowels 100%, so they absorbed 100% of the meat that they were eating. So if you don't go all that often, well, what's the problem with that? It just means you don't have any waste, right? So what constipation really is the consistency, not the frequency. Sometimes those things are correlated on a standard diet, but not on a carnivore diet. So it doesn't matter if you go once a day, once a week, once a month, as long as it's soft. So if it's hard, that's, look up something called the Bristol stool chart. That will tell you what constipation is. And so if it's soft, doesn't matter how often it's coming, it's just as long as it's soft. So you can get actual constipation, which is hard, dry stools, but that only comes if you're under eating fat. So fat, there's a limited capacity. Your body has limited capacity to absorb fat based on our bile. Once we run out of bile, you can't absorb fat. You can absorb a little bit of the MCTs, but it's less than 10%. And that goes directly to your liver, which is why MCTs are very ketogenic, because they go directly to your liver and get turned to, metabolized and turned into ketones. The rest of it just goes out. You can't absorb them, you can't use them. They go out in your stools, and it's that excess fat that actually keeps your stool soft. And you will see this as you change your fat. You eat a lot more fat than your body can absorb, you're going to get loose stools. It's going to be its own problem. You don't eat enough, then you're going to get dry, hard stools. So you want to get that Goldilocks amount where you're just eating enough that it's soft but not loose. And that's how you know you're getting enough fat. You can complicate that by having coffee, tea, artificial sweeteners, usually in the coffee or tea, because they're gross and they're bitter. Magnesium supplements, especially things that don't have high absorption, things like magnesium oxide, for instance, has almost zero absorption. It's just a laxative, basically. Or medications. A lot of medications like metformin, for example, can cause gut issues and loose stools, or at least contribute a little bit. And you sort of have these little things. You're having coffee and you're having a magnesium supplement, probably because you're drinking coffee and that strips out magnesium. And then you're having, and you're diabetic, so you have metformin, and then maybe the artificial sweeteners on top of that. And then you go on carnivore, and because you're trying to help the diabetes and help these other sorts of things, and then all of a sudden it's just, you've got problems. And this is what Joe Rogan called disaster pants. So Joe Rogan did carnivore, but I am pretty sure he still drank coffee. I don't know that for sure, but that's my recollection. And so that's obviously going to contribute to that, right? So you get rid of all those things, and then you know how much you're getting. Also, if you are constipated, if you aren't eating enough fat, and you are getting hard, dry stools, drinking the coffee could cover that up. Having the metformin, the magnesium, the artificial sweeteners, maybe you're like, oh yeah, my stools are soft. Maybe they're a bit hard, but they're okay. Or maybe you even have loose stools. Like, oh Christ, what's that about? Well, that may be covering up for the fact that you're actually under eating fat. So you want to do this on a clean slate. None of those things. You don't want any of those things in your diet. And then just eat fatty meat, and then you see how much your body actually wants. So yes, you can get actual constipation, which is hard, dry stools, but only when you're eating under eating fat. That's the only time. You basically, if you are eating enough fat, you eat enough fat at a certain point, you will get loose stools. So if you are getting hard, dry stools, then by definition, you are under eating fat. Even if you think you're eating more fat than you've ever eaten your entire life, it doesn't matter. If you're getting hard, dry stools, you're not eating enough fat, because your body's absorbing 100% of that fat and absorbing all of it, and there's no excess, right? So by definition, if you're constipated, you are not eating enough fat. That's definitional. That's a carnivore definition. And so yes, you can do it, but only if you are under eating fat, which is actually quite common that people do. That's one of the reasons that people maybe don't get the same benefits and results as other people, because they're under eating fat. I try to get 80% of my calories from fat and then some. I do what Maggie does, is I take grass-fed beef fat, cut it up into chunks, throw it in the air fryer, throw it on the pan, and I have a pile of fat next to my meat or eggs every day. I don't eat eggs all that often, but again, adding a lot of butter or a lot of fat to that as well. I'm getting at least 80% of my calories from fat, and and my body takes it in. I'm not getting loose stools or anything like that. So my body's absorbing it. It wants that. So yeah, people don't realize just how much fat you need. So hope that helps. Okay, next question is a super chat from Zoe Retsines. Sorry if I butchered your name, but thank you so much for the super chat. Zoe says her husband stopped statins and his triglycerides to 1.35, but his cholesterol is high. HDL, it's 1, non-HDL is 6.6. total cholesterol to HDL ratio, or I think is that looking at the ratio, or is it just total cholesterol? It's like 7.47. So the thing to remember is that cholesterol has never been proven in a randomized controlled or experimental design study that can actually show cause and effect. It has never been shown to have a cause and effect relationship between increased cholesterol and cardiovascular disease or atherosclerosis. Never. That's never been done. There have been studies that could have shown that, and they've shown the opposite, that as you lower LDL and total cholesterol, more people die of heart attacks and strokes as a result. So they, in like the Minnesota coronary experiment, they took 9,600 people that were institutionalized so they could control every single meal in and out, right? As far as you can, contraband aside. And so it was a double-blind, placebo-controlled study that they did for 5 years between 1968 and 1973. And they replaced animal fat and butter with vegetable oils and margarine. So no one knew what anyone was getting. And they found that, yes, indeed, total cholesterol and LDL did come down with the plant oils, which doesn't make me it's not very surprising, because there's plant sterols, which we know make your body artificially lower its own cholesterol, right? Like if you fast for 5 days, your cholesterol is going to go up, right? Your total cholesterol, LDL, and HDL will go up, triglycerides will come down. That's what your body wants. That's if you just leave your body alone and let it do its own thing, that's what's going to happen. Your LDL is going to go up, HDL is going to go up. So that's your body wanting to do this. So we are manipulating it and forcing it to change from its normal biological pattern, which doesn't make any sense. And that would suggest that we are inherently flawed in our bodies trying to kill ourselves, right? Which doesn't make any sense. And also people that fast regularly actually have lower rates of cardiovascular disease, even though cholesterol goes up. So in the Minnesota coronary experiment, they replaced animal fats with vegetable oils. LDL and HDL came down. Death from heart attacks and strokes went up in that treatment group. Okay, so that was buried for 40 years. It didn't get published until 2014 by Dr. Ramsden from the NIH, who found this study and was able to get the data and publish it. Had an independent statistician look at it, and that's what they found. Right. So this is fraud that cholesterol causes heart disease. It's complete and utter nonsense. You want high HDL and low triglycerides, and your husband has a pretty good range. His HDL and triglycerides are fairly equal. And this is what's, in the guidelines, you look at things like metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome increases your risk of cardiovascular disease by 600%. One of the criterion for that is low HDL, high triglycerides. So basically, triglycerides being over double what your HDL is. Okay, so your husband's not that, right? So it's under that. So that's good. That's really good. Going carnivore can actually improve that more. Those triglycerides will come down generally under 1. HDL can go up to 1.5, 2, or even above. So my HDL and triglycerides my HDL is over 3 times higher than my triglycerides. So it's back the other way. So instead of being just half of the HDL, having half the HDL as triglycerides, that being an acceptable range, equal being very good range, my HDL is 3-4 times higher than that, and could be higher than that now, because I haven't checked in a while, because it's sort of a waste of time and money, honestly, at least for me, because it's never been different, and I don't care what my LDL is. In fact, large population studies with 12 million people, the largest population studies ever been done on this, has actually showed that more LDL is actually associated with longer life and lower all-cause mortality. There was a study out of Sweden a couple of years ago. They looked at different biomarkers that could best predict living over 100, and they found the 2 best biomarkers to predict living over 100 was low insulin and high total cholesterol. So again, we are being lied to. Your brain is made out of cholesterol, your nervous system is made out of cholesterol, your hormones are made out of cholesterol, every cell in your body is made out of cholesterol. So the idea that our bodies are poison to our bodies, it makes exactly as much sense as it sounds. It's nonsensical. So for more information on that, I mean, this is just a snapshot of this whole biological picture. I mean, it's just a tiny little marker. There's so much more things that matter, like is insulin resistance, is HbA1c's, fasting glucose, other sorts of metabolic markers of health. They're far, far, far more important in my opinion. But either way, like I was saying earlier, I mean, it's very fickle. Your cholesterol can change for all sorts of different reasons. And, so you have to take it in a very, very consistent sort of pattern and way. And it may be that, the next time you check it, it's very different again. It may not be actually anything you need to worry about. But in a meta-analysis of like 42 randomized controlled trials on people on ketogenic diets and cholesterol, they actually found that the people that were skinnier and healthier actually had higher LDL. And as they sort of put on weight, as measured by BMI, it sort of came down quite sharply, sort of exponentially came down on their LDL, and then sort of flatlined on LDL and body and BMI. And then when it got to like extreme obesity, it actually dropped down. So people with obese patients had actually the lowest LDL, right? So the fitter, healthier, lower BMI people actually had higher LDL. So that's associated with good health, just like in these other populations where we see like these large-scale population studies showing again LDL being associated with good health, more LDL equaling good health. LDL is actually part of your innate immune system. It actually helps fight off infections and cancers. So we are really hurting ourselves by trying to artificially change our cholesterol from what our normal biology would have us be at. So I'm not convinced of that by any stretch of the imagination that cholesterol is a problem. I think it's actually a benefit, and I have a lot of videos on that. And it's not me. I'm not the only one. There's a lot of other people. Dr. Seema Hotra is an interventional cardiologist in the UK. I mean, he wrote a book called A Statin-Free Life, basically arguing it's like we don't need these things and don't actually necessarily want them. So I've interviewed him. I have on my YouTube channel, there's a playlist, and you go into playlists. There's a playlist on cholesterol and heart disease. And so I've got my videos on that and other videos. In my interview with Dr. Malhotra, interview with Dr. Philip Ovadio, who's a cardiothoracic surgeon who uses ketogenic carnivore diets for his patients. And many others, Dr. Paul Mason, I put some of his videos in there as well. So, and that can hopefully, help ease your mind about things and your husband's mind as well. I mean, this is again assuming a carnivore diet. Just whatever those, whatever diet you're on. I think that those triglyceride and HDL levels are fine, and I'm not too worried about total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol because those population studies are not done on ketogenic diets or carnivore diet people. It's done on just the general population. So just the general population with whatever diet, higher LDL was associated with longevity and actually better cancer survival rates and better infectious disease survival rates. So we have been misled, to say the least. Okay, so another super chat from Plant Sparing Carnivore. Thank you so much for the very generous super chat. I really appreciate that. They say, been getting intermittent nausea for over a year with no other symptoms, and doctors can't figure it out. Found in old scans showing C5-6 nerve compression. Could a keyhole procedure type fix it, or is this something else going on? Thank you. Well, so when you're looking at the area of the brain stem that can trigger nausea, is usually much higher up in the brain stem. So it's usually not down as low as C5-6. Okay, so that's first of all. So nerve root compression at that level is unlikely to be something that's going to cause like nausea or something like that. Usually that's up higher. If you have like a tumor pressing on the brain stem, you can get just horrendous nausea and vomiting, intractable vomiting and things like that. I've seen it. It's pretty nasty, and they're really suffering. But that's higher up typically. So well, not typically, it's just higher up. So you can get other sorts of issues with that sort of the C5-6 nerve compression, but also you're not necessarily symptomatic with that. Just because something shows something on an MRI doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to have symptoms. Or even if you have sort of a compressed nerve root, If you have no symptoms of that, typically have like a myopathy or a radiculopathy, where you have sort of pain going down in a specific dermatome down a certain patch of skin that innervates. And they could also affect different myotomes, so the different muscles that are affected by that nerve as well, or that nerve root as well. And so if you don't have any of those sorts of things, I wouldn't be too suspicious about that causing other sorts of symptoms either. But those would be the main ones. It's sort of C5-6, sort of compression. You're getting radiculopathy and myopathy. So you're getting pain, tingling, numbness, and and then eventually motor dysfunction. So that's typically what you see. If you don't have any of that, I probably wouldn't be too concerned about the nerve compression. But it's just something that may be a problem down the future if you can continue to get sort of degeneration on that area. Good thing about ketogenic carnivore diets is they actually improve joint health and reduce the damage that's done to our joints and our discs. There are studies showing that as you remove damaged cartilage from joints, that that damaged cartilage is full of this glycation, the sugar damage that we get from high blood sugar, and so when we also see that in discs, degenerative discs in the spine as well. So there have actually been studies that have shown that too. So that's really interesting. Now you've already had a certain amount of damage. Now again, there can be damage done. You're probably not regrowing any of that cartilage. At least we don't have any evidence that people regrow cartilage anyway by going carnivore. I haven't seen it, and it hasn't happened to my knees yet. So, still holding out hope, but probably not. But I'm so much more functional. Most of my knee is perfect. My surgeon says pristine. It's just that just on the kneecap, I've just damaged because I damaged it. I'm just smacking it with by doing kickboxing since I was 14. So, that is what it is. But I have my inflammation, my pain, and all that sort of stuff it's fine. It's a bit uncomfortable sometimes, but it's not that bad. On the left, I can't even feel it. It's just on my right, it can sort of be a bit of a twinge every now and then. Left side, still, it's bone on bone, but I don't feel anything. So I don't think it's the nerve compression that's probably doing that. Again, I'm not your doctor, so I can't give you a diagnosis, but I'm just saying, just from anatomical looks, like that's just not the level that is typically going to be a problem for this. You never know, but you would expect to see some other sort of radiculopathy or myopathy. You can always talk to your doctor about this. The surgeries for this, again, unless there were like clear signs and symptoms that this compression was actually the problem, causing radiculopathy or myopathy, it's not something that you're going to get a surgeon to do, at least not a good surgeon, like an honest surgeon, because that wouldn't be, if someone just did an operation on you just to bill you, that's like malpractice. You're damaging someone's. It's actually caused a lot of trauma to go into someone's neck and spine, especially for posterior approach. You have to cut through a lot of tissue. You have to scrape off bone or you have to scrape off muscle from the bone. Those muscle attachments, they don't reattach very well. They can attach kind of. It's never going to be the same. And they have to remove bone permanently. That's gone now, right? So yes, there are minimally invasive surgeries that reduce the damage, but it doesn't mean that there's no damage done. And so that's if that is something that you're suffering with, you have extremely bad pain, it's just not helping, these sorts of things, muscle weakness, then that's a reasonable surgery to do in that instance. But if you don't have any of that, then I wouldn't worry about it. There's so many things that we see on MRI. We see this compression, that thing here, and this and the other. Have absolutely no symptoms of that, and no neurological compromise. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Unfortunately, I don't know. I don't have any bright ideas on what could be causing your nausea. If it's intermittent, then that suggests there's something that's coming in and out of your situation, your environment, that maybe could be precipitating this. Maybe not. Maybe it's just something that comes on for other reasons. But one thing you can do, something that I suggest to and recommend to a lot of people that have these sorts of intermittent symptoms, that they don't know exactly what's causing it, is doing a symptom diary and a food diary. What you're eating, what you're doing, and when you get these symptoms, and see if you can see any sort of patterns. And maybe it's just whenever you have certain spices or something like that, you get this nausea. Maybe it's when you have eggs and all of a sudden you have this nausea. It could be anything. Cut down to just beef, lamb, and water. Start from scratch. See if that does anything. If you're still getting nausea, then maybe it's not something that you're eating. Or grass-fed finished, just beef and fat, animal fat. Don't even do the butter or anything like that. And see how that goes. If that gets rid of it, great. Now you start adding things in back one at a time. You're keeping track with your diary, and all of a sudden you see like, ooh, eggs. Oh, Jesus! Every time I have eggs, it flares it up. So then you can figure out that way. That's something that's been done for centuries. Adele Davis did this a lot, and trying to find these things out, cut down with full elimination diet, and especially when people are having problems, like, oh, I love this, I love this. Quite often, those are the things they can have problems with those. So they cut that out for a month and they re-add them back in. They have this huge flare up. They're like, okay, yeah, you need to avoid that. So those sorts of things. So you cut down to brass tacks. You just eat, high quality, grass-fed finished beef or lamb with a yellow fat, and then you see if that helps. If that just cuts out all your problems, you're great. You're done. And then you add one thing back in at a time. And you see what happens. That sort of thing. So hopefully you can find something like that. I'm not convinced that it would be the nerve compression, but you can talk to your doctor about that and see, what they think. But if you don't have any other sorts of symptoms, like the pain going down your arm or anything like that, it is pretty unlikely that that's the culprit. And a new member from Mominator, thank you so much for joining. Glad to have you in the group. So another question is a super chat from Finnish Yeti. Thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Hi, Dr. C. My daughter has Chiari CM1 surgery at 16, now 21. Still fighting fatigue and headaches. Have you seen improvement on patients after decompression on a carnivore diet? Well, I certainly see, again, neurological recovery on a carnivore diet, definitely. The problem with Chiaris is that they are very hard to assess on whether or not they're the actual cause of the neurological issue. They can definitely cause neurological issues. For people that don't know, it's sort of when the skull develops a bit differently and the cerebellum doesn't really have enough room, and sort of gets pushed down through the foramen magnum, which is where the brainstem of the spinal cord come down. And so then it starts so the cerebellar tonsils start pushing down out there, and it starts pushing into the brainstem, and so that can cause different neurological issues. Some people actually have significant neurological issues and tingling and numbness, or even motor dysfunction as well. So it can be quite symptomatic. There's different criteria that you look at when you're doing a physical exam and taking their history and trying to figure out if this is actually likely to be caused by the Chiari, or if it's something similar but probably not going to be benefited by doing surgery. Because the problem is that when you go to a doctor, basically the first likely suspect that comes up, it's just, oh, that's what it is, you got to go do that, and they just stop looking after that. Which is why, like, if you if you go to a doctor and say, hey, I'm having this problem, I've been doing a carnivore diet, they'll just cut you off. That's what it is, you got to stop that right now, because they don't understand it. And so that happens a lot. And so with a Chiari, it's very common for doctors, you telling them, hey, look, I'm having this problem, I'm having fatigue, I'm having headaches, I'm like this sort of thing. Okay, well, why don't we just take a scan and take a look? And all of a sudden you see this Chiari. Oh, well, there you go. That's it. Well, maybe, but it maybe not. And so Chiaris are a bit tough because people really hold out a lot of hope that this is going to fix them. This is going to fix all their problems. And then you get surgery. If you're convinced that, hey, look, this might be something that can be helped by this, then you do the surgery and you come out and it has no change and it has not helped at all. They get really upset, because they're saying, hey, I was putting everything into this, and they haven't been properly counseled to say, hey, look, this may not actually be the problem. It's the balance of probability. It seems likely that you'll get improvement if we decompress this, but it's not for sure, because it may actually be something else. Chiaris don't have a clearly defined, this is what it causes sort of symptoms. So it's a bit of a tough one. But then you do that surgery and they're like, well, I'm still having problems. You didn't do the surgery right. You need to do more. And then you go back and decompress a bit more, and that's still not right. And you decompress more. I knew a gentleman, surgeon I worked with, who neurosurgeon who decompressed this lady 3 times. And it's just like, look, there's nothing there anymore. I mean, there's no more to take off, And so unfortunately, her problems were being caused by something else, but she had focused on this so fixedly for years that she just couldn't think of it as anything else. And unfortunately for her, it was something else, and that surgery didn't help. So I'm very sorry that your daughter is having, still having these issues. I would certainly think about doing carnivore, because we have 100 years of data showing that ketogenic diets, like a carnivore diet, actually do help with headaches, specifically with migraines. And so maybe there's something else going on, or at least something, if she didn't have an adequate decompression with her Chiari, maybe this can help with that. And again, help with the neurological sort of function generally, reducing inflammation and things like that. Geez, lost my train of thought. Sorry, I did check a private message and it completely derailed me. So in any case, I'll sort of can't remember what I was saying, but anyway, so in any case, it could very well help, and could help with the headaches and things like that. And fatigue, certainly. She's going to get all the benefits that we all get from going carnivore as well, which is generally increased energy, mental energy, gets rid of brain fog, can help a whole lot of people with their headaches, especially migraines, and just feeling better overall. So those things could very well improve completely to the aside of any sort of Chiari. So I think there's another message here that he was saying that the Chiari, the surgery helped at first, but now the symptoms are creeping back in 3-4 years later. If you look on MRI, if nothing has changed in those 3-4 years, it's not likely that it's due to the Chiari, because Chiari is a physical issue, that you're getting these cerebellar tonsils pushing in on the brainstem. Okay, so there's a physical dynamic there, like a compression, right? So there's that compression dynamic, and this decompresses that. Well, if you look on MRI, it's still decompressed, then probably something else. And so it's hard to say if that was the main issue at the time, or if it sort of coincidentally sort of went away at the same time. If it came back, is that because there's further compression? You can have scarring, you can have different sorts of things that happen that can sort of cause more issues down the road. MRIs will be helpful for that. And so certainly going back and seeing her surgeon to see, hey, is there something, like symptoms are coming back? Is there a reason that would have happened? Before you do that, certainly trying a carnivore diet just to see how it goes, and hopefully trying to avoid surgeries and things like that. It's always the best thing to do. These are major surgeries. It's no joke surgery, and so you can get very, 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 very damaged by a neurological surgery that ends up going wrong, when you can die. It's not a safe thing. So you really want to desperate's probably the wrong word, but you really want to be convinced that this is the right thing to do, to go under the knife for any procedure, and certainly for a neurosurgical procedure as well. So good luck with that. I definitely think it'd be a good idea to try it at least and see how she goes. A new member who just signed on is Pete. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. Let me see here. Okay, so here's another question from D. Lee, who says, question regarding cholesterol. My new primary care physician just told me that not fasting will only affect triglycerides. Is that accurate? Because she ran my cholesterol without me fasting. First time doing that. Thank you. No, that's not accurate. That can definitely change. It will significantly affect your triglycerides. That's true. But it can also change the other ones as well, and certainly LDL. And the amount of time that you fast actually matters. So if you fast for 10 hours versus 14 hours, you actually get a significant difference in your LDL. So yeah, I wouldn't mess around with that. Cholesterol is so fickle; it changes for like no reason. Again, if you fast for 14 hours, 12 hours, and you get your test done, then you go to the gym for an hour or two, you will have a very different, and then get your blood test again, you'll have a very different result in your second test, even though you're still fasting. So, or you get your blood tested, 12 hours fasted, and you don't work out the day before, and then you get your test, versus working out the day before, fasting 12 hours, and then get your test. You'll get very different results. It is not a reliable test to any stretch of the imagination. And again, cholesterol does not cause heart disease. Does not, full stop. I mean, we have large-scale randomized controlled trials in humans showing that. We have at least 5, that I've come across. Is the Minnesota coronary experiment, the LA Veterans VA hospital experiment, and the Sydney coronary trial as well. And there's a few others. They've all shown that as you get rid of animal fat and lower cholesterol and LDL, more people die of heart attacks and strokes. What are we doing here? And again, the correlative studies show that actually that's not true too. The Framingham study actually showed that lower cholesterol actually was associated with higher cardiovascular mortality rate, but that was misrepresented by the American Heart Association 2 years after it was published, and that's what got into the medical textbooks. That's what I got taught. I guarantee you, your PCP, the only study that they have ever heard of, and I bet you they didn't read it. I guarantee they just got taught this in college, in medical school, and just said, "Here's the Framingham study. This is what it showed. See, no more to see here." It's wrong, and I guarantee you that's the only one they know. I guarantee you they don't know anything about the Minnesota coronary experiment or any of the others. I guarantee you they don't know about any of those large population studies showing it with 12 million people, higher LDL lived the longest, right? Had lower cancer mortality rate, lower infectious disease mortality rate. There's multiple studies showing that, especially over the ages of 60, 65, that people that have higher LDL, higher total cholesterol, live the longest, have less cardiovascular disease, less cardiovascular mortality rates, less heart attacks and strokes. So I don't get too concerned about cholesterol. Triglycerides, sure, but triglycerides are a marker of something else. They're a marker of metabolic dysfunction. It's a marker of stress, high cortisol, and eating a bunch of dirty carbs, sugar, and alcohol. And seed oils. That's what's going to affect your triglycerides negatively. Yes, not fasting will absolutely affect your other cholesterol markers, not just triglycerides, but triglycerides do get affected significantly. And you can test this yourself. You can just get a fasting test done and then eat breakfast, go back and get another test. You'll see the difference. It does make a difference. Okay. So next question is from Melanie, who asks, do you have any information or opinion of the quality of beef from a company called Southern Ranges in Australia? I actually don't know them. I don't know anything about them. But what you want, if you're buying directly from someone, because there are available ranches in Australia that you can buy directly from. I have a friend, Jacob Wolke, in New South Wales. He's down in Albury, and he ships directly to people. And I've been to his ranch. I know exactly what he does, and I've seen his steaks. They're like just butter fat yellow steaks with like huge ribs. They say, the grass fed is so lean, his wild animals are so lean. That's a nonsense. There's people out there saying that you want to eat less fat on a carnivore diet because normally our ancestors were eating wild animals, and wild animals are lean. No, they're not. The muscle bodies themselves don't have fatty infiltrates, but that's a pathological sign of metabolic dysfunction, metabolic syndrome, and diabetes. That's called myosteatosis, and that's the marbling we get from giving them carbs, grains, and that's how we get mild steatosis, from carbs and grains. That's how we get metabolic dysfunction too. So the intramuscular fat isn't there, but the subcutaneous fat and the fat around the muscles is there in abundance if they're healthy. If they're emaciated and skinny and unhealthy and not a very successful member of that herd, then yeah, then they won't have much fat at all. But if you get like the bigger, healthier ones, tons of fat, they're just as much fat, if not more, than the grain finished ones. It's just in a different part of the body, right? So the problem is that butchers trim off all that fat. The butcher, the abattoirs and the slaughterhouses, they cut off all that fat because no one wants fat. They're like, oh, fat's so bad, oh, it's gross. And then it goes to the butcher, it goes to the grocery store, and they cut off even more fat. That's because we're taught that fat's bad for you. Fat's so good for you. So you look at Jake, go to his YouTube channel or his Instagram page. There was a few weeks ago, he had these big like New York strips, and just this big old fat on it like that. It was amazing. I mean, I was like, my mouth was watering just looking at these things, just like dark yellow. They looked like Kerrygold butter yellow, right? And it was amazing. So you can get that. You can get pasture raised, grass fed, finished, eating nothing else except grass. And they know not to trim off all the damn fat. But anywhere you go to, if you're buying like half a cow, a quarter of a cow, you can get them to butcher it anywhere you want. If you're buying it straight and they're just sending you the cuts that they want, then there's almost always going to be all that fat's going to be trimmed off, and you won't necessarily be able to special order and say, no, I want you to keep the fat on there. As a result, you may have to buy those fat trimmings. Like Stockman Steaks sponsored me for a while, sort of on the fence on that. Not that there's anything wrong with them. I really like their stuff, but and I still buy stuff from them, and I get their beef fat. It's like just dark yellow fat. It's like $10 a kilo, which is pretty good. It's also, you can't find this really anywhere else. Grain finished fat, I found it like $5 a kilo from a butcher, but this is dark yellow grass finished stuff. So I like that. I just don't like all the ads on my channel and things like that. I just think it takes away from all these things. So I'm sort of thinking about whether or not I want to sort of do that in the future. But I didn't stop working with them because I didn't think they had a good product. I think they have a great product. But even me talking to them and knowing the owner, I can't get them to not trim off the fat, right? Because they have these different people, the abattoirs that are butchering this stuff, and you can't do the special order. So it's a bit of a pain in the ass. So I don't know if that's the case in Southern Ranges. I don't know if you get like a half a cow, a quarter of a cow, and they can butcher the way you want, give you all the fat and any excess fat, not trim off any fat from the meat. But if they do have to trim something off, put it in the ground beef so you can keep all that fat. Someone else doesn't want their fat, put it in yours, you'll take it, put it in the mince or even in baggies. Those sorts of things. So I don't know about Southern Ranges. I haven't come across them before. I haven't spoken to them. I don't know how they operate, unfortunately. But if they're grass-fed, finished, pasture-raised, or if that's what they're claiming, then that's good. If the fat is yellow, great. They're sounds like they're actually grass-finished. If they're saying they're grass-fed, finished, pasture-raised, and the fat is bleach white, it's probably not grass-finished. In Australia, it is the law that you can call something grass-fed, even if it's been in the feedlot for up to 3 months, right? Or a day before 3 months, and then at 3 months, you have to call it grass-finished or grain-finished, or 3 months in a day, whatever it is. There's a cutoff at about 3 months. You can call it grass-fed before that. But if the fat is white, it's probably not grass-finished. And so you want that yellow fat. That's what you want to look for. So if they have a lot of that yellow fat, it's probably good from that point of view. Okay, another new member, Nancy Naybauer. Thank you so much, Nancy. It's great to have you on board. Next question from Zoe. Thank you so much for the super chat, Zoe. I really appreciate it. Zoe says, I'm 24, training for an Ironman, and hate how carbs make me feel. Can carnivore be positive, and could I be at a high level at can I be a high level athlete? Absolutely. In fact, most of the top tier Ironman competitors are ketogenic, if not full carnivore. Pete Jacobs is a Ironman champion, and he's carnivore now. He wasn't doing full carnivore when he won his Ironman, but he said he was sick and bloated and felt miserable, and it was really, really tough. It was a struggle to train and compete. And then after that, he went carnivore, completely fixed his gut issues. He's just been, shredded and feeling great, able to train again and compete again, and feeling better than ever. Chris Froome is a 4-time Tour de France winner. He's been doing ketogenic diets. In fact, he credits ketogenic diets for helping him lose the weight to let him get into competitive cycling in the first place. It wasn't like he was sort of born into this. He actually came into this later on in life. And, so you will absolutely be able to compete at a high-level athlete. There are actually a lot of high-level athletes that are doing ketogenic or even full carnivore diets. So, and there are studies showing this. There are controlled human trials in elite athletes for elite Ironman and elite ultra marathon runners. I have a whole talk on this. Maybe someone can pop in the link in the description. That for my lecture on ketogenic carnivore athletes, but you can just look up Anthony Chaffee ketogenic carnivore athletes. It'll show up on YouTube. That's a lecture I gave at a medical conference. And just going through the literature, talking about how being ketogenic is a big benefit, but also being carnivore on top of that can even be more of a benefit to an athlete. Again, you're not if you're ketogenic, you're not causing all that joint damage and glycation to your cartilage. You're going to last longer as an athlete, long term. You're not going to have all the gut issues from the fiber and the plant toxins and lectins and all that sort of stuff. I mean, the last thing you need is an upset stomach, 5 hours into an Ironman competition. It's the last thing you need. Autoimmune issues, all these other sorts of things. You don't need that sort of stuff. But I go into the literature and also the physiology and the science behind it, the biochemistry. If for a 65 kilo individual, about 150, 55 pounds, with only 6% body fat, that person, maximal glycogen storage, if you maximally just carb load, just pasta yourself to death, maximum glycogen that you can store in your muscles and liver is about 2,400 kilocalories of energy. Okay, so it's about a day's worth of at normal lifestyle, not running an Ironman. You're gonna bonk. You're gonna run out of energy long before you're done. I mean, Jesus, and you're gonna have to suck down those sugars and gels, and it's gonna cause all sorts of problems. A lot of these guys are pre-diabetic or even diabetic, running ultra marathons and Ironmans, right? But okay, so you only have 2,400 kilocalories of energy in your musculature at 155 pounds, 6% body fat. But that 6% body fat on that individual has over 35,000 kilocalories of energy. So it's over 15 times the amount of energy. Now, if you're not 6% body fat, if you're 10% body fat and you weigh 100 kilos, you could double that easily, right? Or more. You may have closer to 100,000 kilocalories of energy. I mean, you don't need to eat. You don't need to eat anything, and certainly you don't need to eat carbs because your body can access those fat stores. Now, if you eat carbs, then you need to keep eating carbs because now you raise your insulin and you block off that fat storage that you have, and so it blocks lipolysis. So now you can't access your fat stores. So now you're stuck on the glucose and glycogen. So you have to keep sucking down those sugar gels. So yes, you definitely have way more energy. It's actually a benefit to do this fasted in ketosis on carnivore, especially. What about performance? Well, there's something called I go into all of this stuff, so I'll try to be brief here. There's something called the Supernova trial, and they put these people on. There were like speed walkers, elite speed walkers. It's like, is that really a sport? I don't know. I'll let the other people decide that. But either way, they had them put these people into a ketogenic diet. Then in like a week or two, they sort of tested them, and they found that actually they were still burning fat over 90% VO2 max. And that's sort of the argument. You can't do high intensity workouts and be an elite athlete without carb, because over 6% VO2 max, actually 55% VO2 max, you actually switch over to carbohydrate metabolism. So you're not going to burn fat, but that's actually only if you're eating carbohydrates, because you have high insulin that blocks lipolysis. So now that your energy demands increase, you can't get that from your fat, and you're going to have to go into carbohydrates. Whereas the Supernova trial found, and the Volek faster trial found, that people in a state of ketosis actually are burning fat oxidation and ketones at over 90% VO2 max, right? So big difference. And the Supernova trial, I only gave them like a week or two to adapt, and they had problems with electrolytes and hydration and all these other sorts of flaws in that study. And they said, oh, look at this, the ketogenic group didn't perform as much. Yes, they're oxidizing fat over 90% VO2 max, but that didn't translate to performance enhancement. That was a flawed study for many reasons. First and foremost, it gave them a week to adapt. Like, I mean, this is not enough. It can take up to 6 months to fully keto adapt. And you're getting the mitochondrial benefits and all these other sorts of things. But just being able to utilize those ketones properly, simple fact that you're peeing out ketones means you're not able to use them properly. And so after sort of 6 months or so, now you're not peeing out ketones, and people say, oh my goodness, I'm not in ketosis anymore. Well, you are. You check your blood ketones and they're fine. It's just you're using them because you're keto adapted. You've turned on different genes to utilize those ketones properly. So once you do get adapted, then you see very different stories. So Professor Tim Noakes is one of the top sports physiologists, exercise sports medicine doctors in the world, and has been for decades and decades. And he's been saying that ketogenic diets are the way to go for elite athletes. And he showed in just recreational athletes after 6 weeks, there's a double randomized control crossover trial. So people that did carbs or keto, they then let them adapt for 6 weeks. And they said that most people were adapted within 3 weeks, but they gave them 6 weeks. And then after that, they had parity in their performance. They didn't have any drop in their performance. And then they had a crossover trial. They had crossover, right? So they had 2 weeks washout. They eat whatever they want, and then the carb group became the keto group, and vice versa. Then after 6 weeks, they did it again. No drop in their performance, none. So then you look at the McSweeney trial in 2018. Actually showed that in elite athletes and elite Ironman athletes like yourself and ultramarathon runners, they self-selected into keto and carb groups. And after 3 months adaptation, they did a series of testing, and they found that in the keto group, so they did 3 sort of tests, basically anywhere you can move your body athletically. So 100-mile run, and then they did a 6-second sprint, and then a critical power test, like a lifting explosive test, right? So anywhere you can move your body athletically, they tested them. And they found that the ketogenic group beat the carb group in every single test. So you can't say that you're going to get a drop in performance if you are properly adapted, or at least 3 months adapted. You can't say that. But no drop in performance on the Noakes trial either after 6 weeks. And then they had the faster trial had people that were ultramarathon runners and elite Ironman runners that have already done this on their own, and they had already been on ketogenic diets from 9 months to 3 years or more, like 36 months, and like average 22 months. And they actually found that the glycogen, muscle glycogen, was actually equivalent for the keto and the carb group on muscle biopsy. Before a 3-hour run, after the 3-hour run, and then 3 hours after on recovery, even though the carb group was just sucking down gels and sugars, keto group was just fasted. They were just hanging out, letting their body do the rest. So no, you do not need carbs to be an elite athlete. In fact, it holds you back. When your mitochondria are making ATP, they need NAD. They need NAD that turns into NADH, and that helps with the electron transport chain. When you're eating carbohydrates and you to make the exact same amount of ATP, you need 4 NAD molecules versus 1 NAD molecule if you're in ketosis. So you actually don't have that bottleneck of requiring more NAD. You don't run out of NAD, so you can actually produce energy more efficiently in your mitochondria. And the list goes on. I have a whole lecture on it, and I go in at the end showing all the different athletes and things like that have been using ketogenic, carnivore, or animal-based sort of nutrition approaches. These are Olympic athletes. These are Pan American Game competitors. Ryan Talbot, he was a 3-time NCAA Division I All-American decathlete. Won the Big Ten competition his first year doing the decathlete as a carnivore, and his testosterone level jumped from like 650 or 750 or 730 up to 1150 in a year. You know, all these different improvements. And he said he said he had to actually cut down on his workouts a bit because he was getting too muscular, and he was actually, you know, didn't want to get too bulky because he's, you know, he's a decathlete. He has to try to, you know, be fast and jump high as well. So you know, which is a pretty good problem to have. And where it's like you're putting on too much muscle, you're like, whoa, gotta watch out. So the fact that and you can't tell me that as a male athlete, you know, optimizing your testosterone and nearly doubling your testosterone naturally is not going to help your athletic performance. Like, I'm sorry, it's not. That'd be a strange argument to make anyway. And I have so many patients that have doubled or even tripled their testosterone by going on a carnivore diet, ketogenic carnivore diet, and they maintain it, and their athletic performance improves dramatically as well. Now, I'm 45. I maintain under 10% body fat without even working out all that much. And when I do work out, I can outperform almost anybody of any age. You know, when I first came to Australia, I was, you know, 39, 40, and I'm out competing, you know, guys in rugby in all the different trainings that we do who are, you know, in their 20s. You know, some of these people are national team players and things like that. You know, it's just like and then because of how my performance was and how lean and muscular my physique was, without any sort of, you know, PEDs or TRT, anything, nothing like that. They all got really interested in me. Like, hold on a second, let's talk about this carnivore diet again. And a lot of them kept with it. You know, I still talk to them every now and then. And they're saying there's like, you know, there's a core group of players on the team that I played with when I had time to play and my knee didn't swell up every time I run. That they stayed carnivore, and they've been like the Western Australian Premiership champions like 5 years in a row now, and they're just crushing it. And they say they're just feeling amazing doing this. So yes, it absolutely helps their entire rugby team, professional rugby teams in Australia and New Zealand. The All Blacks, a lot of them do carnivore. I've spoken to some of them, and a lot of them do ketogenic carnivore. A lot of the professional rugby players in Australia, you know, like rugby league and things like that, do ketogenic diets or ketogenic carnivore diets. Again, a lot of the elite ultramarathon runners and Ironman runners right now do ketogenic diet or even full carnivore diets, things like that. So yeah, you're going to be just fine. Give yourself a chance to adapt. Okay, at least 6 weeks, you know, 3-4 weeks, you should be back to where you were. Even 2-3 weeks. You know, I felt like I was just starting to improve after, you know, after I hit the 2-week mark. But you know, at least give yourself some time to adapt, and also remember that you can sometimes lose more sodium than you want, and so sometimes that can negatively affect athletic performance as well. So especially in the early sort of weeks as your body's adapting, definitely drink enough water. But also, if you feel the need to add more salt, add more salt. If you feel that you're sort of having a bit of a dip, you're not feeling well, maybe try adding a bit more salt. Because some studies have shown that when you're adapting and your insulin's coming down, you actually can lose more sodium than you want to, which will draw out water, which will make you dehydrated and drop your blood pressure, and that can negatively affect your performance as well. And so that some of these studies actually shown that supplementing with as much as 5 to 7 grams of salt a day is actually beneficial during that adaptation phase. But you know, you can usually easily see that because if you stand up, you sort of get a bit lightheaded, then yeah, you probably are a bit low on salt and fluids as a result. So add some salt, add some more water, and it usually sorts you out. So keep that in mind, and just remember, you know, give yourself a chance to adapt. Understand there is an adaptation phase. Most people will be fine after sort of 3 to 6 weeks, and then getting better and better from there. Your mitochondria will get better, your energy production will get better. Some people take a little longer than that. There's a minority of people that they're not seeing this huge energy boost until about 3 months. And then I've seen a handful, as in less than 5, probably about 3, that it's taken about 6 months. And if that is happening, you probably low on something else that your body is deficient in, and you might need to look at your blood work, your B12, vitamin D, zinc, magnesium, those sorts of things, even selenium, those sorts of things, and try to optimize those things, get ahead of them. Because sometimes when your body's healing, you just need a bigger demand for these things as well. And so it might be that adding in a bit of organs, you know, 3 ounces of liver 3 days a week, maybe a few ounces of kidneys and heart a few days a week as well. That can really help catch you up on all these different vitamins and minerals and things like that. But yeah, you'll do fine. When I was 24, I was doing carnivore and literally couldn't wear myself out. I got in the most insane shape that there was a point that I don't think there was a single human being on this earth that was in better shape than me. And sorry if that sounds conceited, but that was actually my thought at the time. I mean, I was sprinting marathon distances and I couldn't wear myself out. And I was just like, what the hell's going on? I was like, I should probably enter a marathon and just sprint the whole thing, set a world record in my first marathon, and just make the papers, because like I'm never going to be in this good of shape again in my life, and I won't. And it would be great to sort of do that, but the thought of just running for 26 miles straight just bored me to tears. Also, this is before the internet was all that flash, and so I didn't even know how to find out when a marathon was coming to Seattle, and so I just never did it. But that was my experience, and I felt better than I ever have before or since, except right now that I'm doing the same thing. Unfortunately, I can't train as much as I did then, but I still feel amazing, and you will too. So good luck with that. There's another super chat from Zoe. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think it's sort of an add-on to the previous one. So I was saying that off statins, okay, right, but we've been strict carnivore for 1 year, but he still drinks wine. Can you please tell him to stop? I did a 15-day water fast. Yeah, well, look, alcohol is a problem. Alcohol is I mean, it's a poison. There's actually no safe amount of alcohol to consume, unfortunately. They say, well, we should drink 2 glasses of wine a day. That is not coming from a reputable scientific source. That's coming from the alcohol producers and the lobbyists associated with them. Or the people that they've paid off. You say, oh, we get retinol. And this, well, first of all, you can just take retinol. You don't have to take the alcohol with it. And second of all, retinol has not been reproduced to show an actual benefit. David Sinclair, started pushing the whole resveratrol thing, and made a lot of money for that. He sold his company that produced resveratrol, or studied it, to, I forget the pharmaceutical company, but anyway, sold it for like over $700 million, right? And they dumped it. They actually trashed it because they couldn't reproduce his findings. It was probably their fault. I mean, they didn't do their due diligence. They probably should have checked it and see if they could reproduce the results that he got before they spent nearly $1 billion buying it off of him. But that's the thing. If you can't reproduce these results, they're not legitimate, and so that hasn't been done. You can't reproduce they couldn't reproduce the benefits of resveratrol. Even in mice, so how do we know if you can't even, if you don't even have any confirmed benefits in mice, how the hell can we say that this is definitely going to help people? It's nonsense, so, and yet people are selling resveratrol because, there's a hype to it and they can make some money. But the people that bought the resveratrol from David Sinclair, they actually don't make it. They dumped it because they found that it's crap. It's not a good product. So that's not going to be a good excuse to get the wine, right? Resveratrol not been shown to actually be beneficial. Alcohol is a problem. Alcohol is going to raise your triglycerides. Alcohol is going to oxidize and damage and glycate your arteries, and your cholesterol and these sorts of things can cause problems. But it causes damage. It causes physical damage to your structures in your arteries, and so this can cause peripheral vascular disease. This can cause cardiovascular disease, and those sorts of things. So alcohol is not great. Alcohol is fun, but so is crack. And it's like, and you probably don't smoke crack because you understand, like, oh gosh, no, why would I do that? That's this horribly addictive, dangerous substance. So is alcohol, unfortunately. And yes, I can put those in the same categories because more people die and ruin their lives from alcohol than crack. Far more. And far more people than that destroy their lives with sugar, or destroy their children's lives with sugar. So these things are drugs and they're harmful, And so you just have to sort of decide, is this something that do you want to put harmful substances in your bodies? That's an individual choice. I can't make that for you, but for me, it's a pretty clear choice. I feel it drops my energy. I don't feel hungover, but I feel that, rare times that I do drink, like once every 3 years or something like that, and it gets less frequent, as I go, that I don't have the same energy. I'm just more tired. I don't have the same exercise potential. Normally I can go to the gym and I don't want to leave. I just want to do set after set after set. I used to have to cap it at 20 sets, do 20 sets of bench, 20 sets of squats, 20 sets of deadlift, and so on, because I just wanted to keep going because I felt so good exercising. And it made my body feel good, and it generated so much energy. I just felt amazing. And so I didn't want to stop. I just wanted to keep going. Then if I drink, I can maybe get out 6 sets and I feel exhausted. I'm just like, I can't do this. I got to go home. I feel horrible. Whereas normally I'm at 20 sets and I don't want to leave. I have to drag myself out of there. Then the next week I can do maybe 12 sets. And then I'm just, no, I'm out. And then maybe 16, 17 sets. And then I'm like, no, I'm done. And it's not until the 4th week that I could get back to doing 20. And I didn't exactly feel good about it. I just felt like, but I could do it. So that's how this affects you. Just drinking alcohol one night, I set me back for nearly a month. And so when I look at this and say, like, okay, well, something has to be worth it to me to basically not feel my best for a month to have it be worth me drinking. Not many things reach that threshold. If you're drinking every night or you're drinking every week, you're never even going to see the other side of it. Maybe do like a dry July sort of thing. Maybe take a month off. Don't drink at all. You will feel remarkably better. And then you start drinking again, really focus on how you feel, not the next day, but the next week. And then the week after that, you will feel a difference. You will feel a dramatic difference. And, the more you drink, the less you notice it, because you just always have this background of sort of that you sort of don't feel great all the time. And that's just normal to you now. But when you get it out of your system and you actually see what life can be like, it's a very different story, and your health will thank you for it. Okay, very nice from D. Lee saying I'm learning so much tonight. Thank you. Well, thank you. I'm glad that's helpful. Okay, probably cap it on the super chats for now, because I'm sort of going about 2 hours, and that's probably a good time. So I'll finish the super chats that we have, and then we'll probably wrap up. Okay. So next question is from Gunther SB. Good to see you, Gunther. If a male carnivore wants muscle glycogen, and thank you very much for the super chat as well. If a male carnivore wants muscle glycogen replenishment for weight training, is a 2-to-1 fat to protein ratio in grams worse than a lower fat to protein ratio? What would be optimal? Would 3-MAD, 2-MAD, or OMAD be better? I just let your body do its thing, man. I always train fasted, always perform fasted, always compete fasted. You always do better that way. No, 2-to-1 fat to protein actually is better. It's fine. The thing is, the energy that you're using on the day of a performance or a training session is not from the food you ate that morning or the night before. It's from food you ate 2 weeks ago, and you stored in your fat, and then you're using that fat. So you are going to make all the glycogen that you need. I mean, we saw that in the Volek and Finney Faster trial in 2016, that they showed that ketogenic athletes, had been ketogenic for years, that they had the exact same muscle glycogen at all stages. Before a 3-hour run, after a 3-hour run was down, but it was exactly equivalent to the carb athletes that were sucking down gels. And then 3 hours later, exactly the same as in recovery as the guys sucking down gels. So eating carbs is not going to replenish glycogen faster. It's exactly the same with or without the carbs and the sugar if you're in ketosis. So that's going to be fine. So here's the thing: when you transport fat from your adipose tissue to your liver, it comes with a glycerol backbone. You have sort of 3 lipids and a glycerol backbone. Okay, so triglycerides, right? 3 glycerides, or three fatty acids and a glycerol backbone. Okay, so those fatty acids turn into ketones. That glycerol turns into carbs and glycogen. So glucose and glycogen, okay? So as you're burning fat for energy, you are automatically and necessarily making glucose and glycogen. So you'll be constantly replenishing your glucose and glycogen constantly. So that's the equivalent of you sucking down sugars and gels and carbs and all that sort of garbage, right? Because you're constantly making these things. Your body's doing that. Second you eat carbohydrates, your insulin goes up, shuts that down. Now you can't produce carbs. You can't produce glycogen, and you can't produce ketones either. So no, I wouldn't get too touchy about, screwing around with your fat to protein ratio and this, that, and the other. I would just train fasted. I would compete fasted. I would just eat normally 2 to 1 grams of fat to protein. Typically is where you want enough fat. You want enough protein. That's what you need. Typically that boils down to about a 2 to 1 ratio. Or or maybe closer to 1 to 1 ratio, but quite often it's 2 to 1. So you want to keep eating fat until you just can't absorb anymore, and you get soft stools, but not loose stools. And then you want to eat enough protein that to your body's demand, so that you eat until it stops tasting good, and you're eating that lean meat like, wow, this tastes good, and then it doesn't really taste all that interesting anymore. That's what you want to do. Your body will take care of the rest. As far as eating how many times a day, just do what your body's telling you to do. If you're putting on muscle and you're training a lot, you probably will need to eat more than once a day. And quite often it's twice a day is fine. But just eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. Do that as many times during the day as your body's telling you to. Try not to do it before your workouts. Or if you do need to eat before your workouts, try and make it at least 5 hours before your workouts. You need a big old space between them. And you may not be able to eat like breakfast to eat until you're just, really full, because you'll get tired and your body will just be like, okay, go take a nap under your desk or something like that. And that's not going to help you for a workout later either. So you eat, but still leave a little room where your body is just like, ooh, yeah, we like, that's good, but we need more. And so it's going to keep driving you to get more, those sorts of things. And then you'll be fine. So yeah, just keep doing the same thing that you were doing before, but again, train fasted and perform fasted for sure. Okay, next is a super chat from Billy Poon. Thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. Hi, Dr. C. Tapering risperidone hyperbolically. Carnivore 1+ year. Last dose in June 2028. Okay, so the taper is basically June 2028. And he's asking if he should do a faster taper. Skin boils, insulin resistance. Guess Dr. Horowitz. I don't. Which Dr. Horowitz? I don't know which one you're referring to, but someone who adds interesting perspective to the conversation, then I'm happy to have anybody on, really. Certainly insulin resistance, that's going to go away with carnivore, and hopefully after a year you should be pretty much away from that, unless you have high stress, poor sleep, or maybe you're not fully 100% carnivore. Maybe you're including other sorts of things, maybe even just some artificial sweeteners, things like that. But boils as well. A lot of people find that their skin issues improve dramatically with carnivore, by going carnivore. So see what you think, or see how you go there. Hopefully that is improving as well. Risperidone. So the thing is, I can't help with de-prescribing or giving medical advice about prescriptions, things like that online, unfortunately. But there are a lot of medications that do require a soft taper. A 2-year taper is sort of on the longer end of things that I've ever come across. Usually it's not that long. But certainly working with your doctor and saying, hey, I don't feel I really need this anymore, or maybe don't need as much. Can we start to taper this? And they can work with you and give you their specific weaning patterns for these things that are, the people have come up with guidelines that are available, can be looked up, certainly looked up by your doctor, that are available for people that are interested in tapering these things off. That should absolutely be done with the supervision of your doctor. And sometimes you don't need as much of the medication, and sometimes you wean down to a point, but then you start getting symptomatic again. So okay, maybe you need some medication, but maybe not as much as you did before, and it's your doctor who's going to help you with that that tapering and titration, getting the correct level of medication, and that's really, really important to get that help with. I would be surprised if the normal tapering dose for risperidone would last to 2028. Maybe that was a typo. Maybe that was 2026. But even then, that sort of seems a bit long as well. But again, it depends, and you have to sort of talk to your doctor about that as well. But I would talk to them, and if you're feeling that you're doing well, and the reasons that you were taking risperidone seems to be pretty much settled, then that is very reasonable to consider weaning down or even weaning off. Not many doctors are really going to understand that. I mean, what they're going to see is that just, well, normally, you can never come off this medication. Like, you're just going to need this the rest of your life, because people are doing things that aren't going to help heal them. It's not going to addressing the root cause of these issues. And so, yeah, from their perspective, no one comes off this stuff. And under normal circumstances, they don't. But these aren't normal circumstances. You're doing something different, so you could potentially be getting different results. So a lot of my practice is deprescribing, getting people off medications and things like that they just don't need anymore. And so that's great. That's great to see. It's great to do that for people. And it's great that they can come off these medications. It's very freeing when they come off medication instead of on more medication, because you're just adding more drugs and more pills and more stuff. It can be hard, because you're thinking like, gosh, my health is really getting worse, and I need more and more pills just to function. And you have all those side effects, and you don't feel good, and it's tough. But then when you start getting better and you're feeling good, and now you don't need as much, and you're coming off, and now you're getting less and less side effects, that's really exciting, for people. And so, that's a really, really nice thing to be able to do, and for people, and to see when that happens. But not everybody can come off all their medication. Not everybody can come off medication right away. A lot of people need to stay on the medication for a while, and again, sort of ease off of it when and as it's appropriate. And of course, you're going to have to, work with your doctor to do that. So good luck with that. I really hope that things get to a point that you can come off your medication. That'd be really exciting too. But sometimes you need some of these things, and that's okay. It's okay that when you do everything that it's in your power to do, and you still need a bit of medication, like, that's what medication's for. It's not a crutch and just like, oh, I'm just going to live my life and do whatever, and you give me a drug that fixes all my bad habits and decisions. That's a terrible way to go through life. But that's what these pharmaceutical companies bank on, is that people aren't going to have any sort of insight and introspection into their own health, and they're just going to say, oh, okay, I'm just going to do whatever, and doctor, you just give me meds or whatever. And they make a lot of money doing that, but that's obviously not the right thing to do for patients or ourselves. So yeah, so good luck with that. Hopefully that is something you're able to do and improve your health and just get better and better as you go. So good luck with that. There's a super chat. Yeah, there's a super chat from John Cosmo. Thank you so much for that. And then he put the question down below, which says, I've been carnivore for over a year and a half. I'm a great weight, but now I want to get cut. I eat ground beef, high fat, 70-30, mix in bacon and eggs. I'm just wondering if I should change my meat to low fat. Thank you. I wouldn't. So me eating just ribeyes and butter and things like that, and just training hard, I was 6% body fat without any sort of restrictions or changes or anything like that. Just playing rugby and lifting weights. So just lift weight hard, sprint a lot. Join a team, join some sort of fitness group or something like that, where they challenge you to push yourself harder and harder. Rugby's great for that, because you're just sprinting constantly. And it's a lot of fitness, it's a lot of training, it's a lot of sprint training, which is that high intensity training that you want. And you'll get absolutely shredded, especially on this diet. You'll get absolutely cut up. And you don't need to change any of that stuff. If anything, I'd say the opposite. If you really wanted to lose, like if you wanted to game your metabolism and your hormones, I would actually go the other way. I'd actually increase the fat. and try to get up to like 80 or even 90% calories from fat, because once you get up to about 90% calories from fat and under 9% or under calories from protein, you actually turn on a hormone called FGF21, which triggers even more lipolysis. So it can increase your basal metabolic rate and your fat burning by another 400 kilocalories a day, and that's from lipolysis. You're gonna shred down a lot of fat. When you're just in ketosis, you will actually increase your basal metabolic rate by 350 kilocalories. So now you're going up. So super high fat, and this is why people, when they hit a stall, they increase their fat. They actually help trigger weight loss. It's likely because of that FGF21. And so when you're in ketosis, when you're doing this with fat and meat, then you're actually getting not 400, not 350, but 750 extra kilocalories in increased metabolism. So that's pretty good, and you're gonna be buzzing with energy all the time. We have the sugar diet thing that's come around, right? So that's this thing where people are just eating a whole bunch of candy and lollipops and Skittles and drinking soda and all that sort of garbage, and think, wow, I'm losing weight, I'm losing fat, and all that sort of stuff. But that's because they're again dropping their protein below 9% calories from protein, and that's triggering that FGF21. But there are actually studies done that actually show that if you do that with just high fat, low protein, it's the low protein that's important. And so when you do it with high fat, low carb, or no carb, low protein, you get the exact same difference, stimulation of FGF21. But when you're in ketosis, you're going to get an extra 350 on top of that. So it's actually going to be even better than doing the sugar diet side of things. Also, the sugar diet is completely deficient and devoid of nutrients, right? Vitamins, minerals, proteins, fats. Although, the proteins you're going to get just a lower amount anyway, just because you're doing that sort of fat. But the fats, these are essential fats, and that you need for optimal health, certainly from a longevity point of view and a long-term point of view. So you get more, higher basal metabolic rate. You're burning more calories, more fat by doing ketogenic approach and increasing the fat, and you're getting all the nutrients you need, right? So I would just keep doing what you're doing. I would just train hard and just push yourself. If anything, if you change it in any way, I would eat more fat, not less, definitely. And people have done that. Sean Baker's done that. Nick Norwitz have done that. They just eat more fat, more fat, more fat, and they trigger this. All of a sudden, they just woof, and they just get absolutely shredded. Nick's already pretty cut. He's a very, very lean dude. Dr. Baker is very lean too, very muscular, but he was even saying he shredded a lot of fat off of that just by really ramping up the fat that he was eating. Sort of always eating around 80% calories from fat, so I'm sort of always under 10% body fat. And when I train, it goes down to 6. The point that I've got veins popping out on my abs, and I'm like, I'm not cutting anything. I'm not fasting. I'm not starving myself. I'm certainly not cutting down on the fat. It's just, I'm just eating as much fatty meat as my body tells me to. Again, I'm eating fatty meat until it stops tasting good. I'm eating as many times during the day as my body tells me to, and I'm trying to aim for that, high fat to protein ratio, like 2 to 1 grams of fat to protein, and that's it. So that works at any stage of life. If you're trying to lose body fat, if you're trying to put on lean body mass, if you're trying to maintain, then you just do those same principles. And if you want to improve things even more, you train hard. And by doing that, you're going to get to where you want to be. So good luck with that. And hopefully you just feel better and better and get the results that you want. Okay. Well, that's probably a good place to stop. We've been going for about 2 hours and 20 minutes. Hopefully people enjoyed that. And thank you so much to everybody who has joined onto our membership group. We are going to do more of these YouTube lives, but just for the private groups in the future as well. And there'll be other sorts of things that members will get, like they'll get to see the early release videos and things like that will come out a week before, and some different posts and polls and other sorts of things that will be out for members, and sort of and so it's always going to be a work in progress. We're trying to develop these things, so as we go, please do, give feedback and let me know on things that I can improve and make better and all that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, thank you all for being here. Thank you all very much for the super chats, and thank you all to those of you who have joined the membership groups. And great. So we'll see you all next week, and hopefully you're all doing well, and hopefully it was helpful. Great. Thank you all very much. We'll see you next time.